preservation is an important thing across all mediums, whether it's films, books, or games. Your favourite MMO might lose its servers and you may never play it again. Your Game Boy cartridge's battery dies and suddenly all of your Pokemon are dead. Or if it's a board game, it could be even worse. Maybe the company who prints your favourite game stops printing it altogether and your favourite game's continued existence relies on some flimsy box of cardboard and plastic being kept safe somewhere that you may never even be able to go. That's why it's really sad to look at some of the games that we wish we could still play and we hope that we'll see again one day. So with that in mind, to honour some of our fallen comrades, here's some games that we wish were still around today and weren't so goddamn out of print. Let's start with number 1.
Do you love booty? Do you love sailing the 7 seas? Do you love reading your friends' minds? Well, then Libertalia might just be the game for you. And for the low price of... What's that? Libertalia's out of print. God dang it! Libertalia is a role selection game for 2 to 6 players by Marabunta, and it's probably the game that got me into modern tabletop games way back in 2012? It's a game in which you play as pirate captains with an identical deck of 30 cards. Each round, one player will, at random, shuffle their deck and choose 9 cards out of that deck, and the other players have to then go through their deck and make sure they pick out the same cards. So you all have exactly the same cards to hand. You play over 6 turns, 3 rounds, and each turn there's a possibility to get some booty at the end of the day. There's several different day phases: day, dusk, night, and then there's something that happens at the end of the week as well. And the booty that is divvied out at the end of each day is drawn at random from a bag, and it will include anything from a gold chest, jewels, a cask, maps, which are kind of set collectors where you earn points, as well as things like the Spanish officer, which will kill the character that you played that turn if you pick up that token. The sword, which lets you kill somebody else's player character from their den, which can be great if they have something really good that will only set off at the end of the week. You can kill that off before they even get anything out of that. And cursed relics, which are -3 points for each cursed relic that you have at the end of the week. So figuring out which card to play on any given turn is all about looking at the booty that's to hand, trying to work out what you want, and then also trying to work out what the other players are probably going to play, because you know what cards they have. Cards are numbered from 1 to 30, and that's the rank of that character that you play. And they all have special abilities as well that are written on the cards. If you play the same rank card as somebody else, because you play your cards face down and they all get revealed at the same time, if you happen to play the same rank as somebody else, there is another number on each card, which is the kind of influence that character has. So there's a tiebreaker. And it's quite interesting because you play your cards face down, they all get revealed, and then you put them in ascending order from left to right. And then any day powers that they have get triggered from left to right as well. So you start with the lowest ranked character and you do their ability and you move up along the ranks like that. However, when it comes to divvying up the booty, which kind of happens in the dusk phase, you actually start with the highest rank, so you work from right to left. So it's quite interesting in the way that the lower ranked characters, even though they are last to choose the booty, they can kind of mess with the higher ranked characters quite often depending on what their day ability is. So there's the Brute, for example, who can knock out the highest value card, or I think one is called the Beggar, which they steal from the highest value card, they steal from the player. And so it's all about working out what's best for you, but also trying to second guess what your opponents are going to do and using that to your advantage. You're also kind of trying to plan the whole week based on the cards that you have, because a lot of cards will work really well in certain combinations, depending on the cards you have available and depending on the booty that is there, and a lot of different factors to take into account. But even having said that, it's a really simple game. Like, the mechanics, you pick them up straight away. Like, I remember being taught this and I was like, okay, I get it. Like, and I was brand new to board games. I'm really upset that it's out of print because I actually learned it through a friend of mine who had the game, or still has the game, I'm sure. And I never really thought to get it at the time. This was, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And now I'm trying to get the game and it's impossible. It's either ridiculously expensive or just not really around. So I would highly recommend, if you can get a copy, if you can get your hands on Libertalia, grab it with both hands. It is available on board game websites like Board Game Arena. I play it on there all the time and it works perfectly, but I would love to get a physical copy. But it's not a thing, is it? It's not a thing.
Netrunner is the card game so good it lived and died twice. But if any game deserves another shot at life, it's this one. Richard Garfield may best be known as the creator of Magic the Gathering, but Netrunner, originally released only a few years after Magic, is arguably his true masterpiece. Like Magic, it's a head-to-head competitive card game for 2 players, but here, players' spells are software and their creatures are lines of code. One player is a rogue hacker known as a runner, who's trying to infiltrate the systems of their opponent's corporation, steal valuable data, and make it out. The Megacorp player, on the other hand, has the power of firewalls and security software on their side, known in-game as ICE. While the basics of the game are the same, players spending clicks and credits to play cards and try and score 7 points before their rival, Netrunner is a very different game depending on which side of the table you're sat on. The Megacorp player must set up and secure remote servers containing agenda points by playing layers of ice in a line on the table. The runner, meanwhile, prepares for their digital heist by installing programs before making runs in order to try and pass by all of the Megacorp's ice and hack into one of the remote servers, hoping that it contains precious data and the agenda points they need to win. But the runner won't know exactly what they're up against until they make a run, with the Megacorp playing cards face down and then paying credits to reveal traps and obstacles as the runner encounters them, hoping to force them to take damage and even jack out before they reach the remote server. Netrunner's exceptional combination of asymmetric gameplay, bluffing, strategy and tension as the 2 players throw down in the virtual arena made it unlike any game before or since. It's rightly held up as one of, if not the greatest card games ever made, helped by its engrossing futuristic world of dystopian corporations and underground hackers. Maybe it was too good to last. The original Netrunner only lasted a handful of years before being dropped by its original publisher, Magic the Gathering maker Wizards of the Coast, around the turn of the millennium. For over a decade, the game sat as a lost masterpiece, before hope came in the form of Fantasy Flight Games, which relaunched the collectible card game as a living card game in 2012. Fixed expansion boxes replaced randomized booster packs, and the game was moved from its shared setting with tabletop RPG Cyberpunk 2020 to the world of Android. Android Netrunner arguably pulled off the impossible by improving on near perfection, and for 6 years it soared with new expansion cycles, tournaments, rotations, and the release of a brand new core set. Then it died. Only a matter of months after the release of the new revised core set, Android Netrunner was cancelled in late 2018 as the result of a licensing split between Wizards of the Coast and Fantasy Flight Games. It was the second untimely demise for the game, and for now at least, a permanent one. Luckily, the game going out of print officially hasn't made it completely impossible to experience. A group of fans have taken it upon themselves to keep the card game going with Project Nisai, an organisation that releases unofficial new cards, expansions and rotations for Android Netrunner. You can pick up the fan-made game online and get a taste of Netrunner for yourself without having to track down a rare and potentially pricey copy of the original. Will we ever see Android Netrunner return in full? No one knows, but with the recent success of its distant relative Cyberpunk Red and a renewed interest in sci-fi worlds on the tabletop, hopefully Netrunner will have another chance to capture the hearts and minds of another generation of players. Until then, the twists and turns of its story only add to the legend of a legendary game.
Behold, Camelot, the land of chivalrous knights, magical relics and great deeds. Will you come to its rescue at the kingdom's hour of need? Or will you bring about its downfall? Take the ultimate test of fate and blah blah blah. That was a bit about Shadows over Camelot, a co-op game that's been out of print for a while, and one that hasn't got the most original of themes. In Shadows over Camelot, you play as the Knight of the Round Table, aiding the king, that's Arthur, in his attempts to protect Camelot from an invading army of Saxons and Picts. However, what the game lacks in the thematic originality, it more than makes up for in gameplay. The Knights of the Round Table is an ancient medieval order that's represented in this game by, of course, King Arthur, Sir Galahad, Sir Bedivere, Sir Gawain, Sir Kay, Sir Tristan, Sir Palamedes, and the best in the bunch, in my opinion, Sir Percival. Don't you just adore his flowing locks and shining armour that's decorated with beating hearts? Though they are equally as noble, each knight has their own special power that they can use to aid the others throughout the game. For example, King Arthur can exchange cards with a knight at any point on their turn, whereas whenever they use the draw cards action, Gawain can gain additional cards. Very handy. However, do not get blinded by the outrageous chivalry and beautiful hair, dear audience, because one of these knights is not who they see. You see, someone on the Round Table has defected to the evil side and used their position in court to influence decisions for the worst. Remember that army of Saxons and Picts I was telling you about? Well, if they overwhelm Camelot with their siege engines, then the kingdom falls and the heroes lose. Well, turns out that this traitorous knight is working with that particular invading army right under the players' noses, and it could be any one of you. The audacity! Players can actually decide whether they want to experience Shadows over Camelot with the traitor mechanic, as it's recommended that first-time players try the game without it. But where's the fun in that? If they do want to take the traitor challenge, then they secretly draw cards at the beginning of the game to determine their loyalty. It's the traitor's job to subtly make it more difficult for the other players to achieve their win condition, which, frankly, won't be too tough if the heroes don't have their eye on the ball, because this game is hard. So what exactly do the heroes have to do to win? Well, there are a number of quests that players pursue, from the classic feats of Arthurian valour like obtaining Excalibur from the lake or finding the Holy Grail to more standard fare such as, fighting the incoming hordes of Saxons and Picts. Either way, quests can be completed by playing certain white cards that can be obtained back at the home base in Camelot. The heroes must work together to gather enough of the right cards in order to finish each quest, which will place white swords on the round table. Enough of those and the knights win the game. However, quests can also fail, causing the dreaded black swords to ring around the table instead. Too many of those means that the heroes can kiss their knightly behinds goodbye. If that wasn't bad enough, at the beginning of each player's turn, the active knight must perform one of the 3 possible evil actions. This delightful selection includes adding a siege engine to the army outside of Camelot, drawing a black card that can push a quest closer to failure or do even nastier stuff, or have the current player take damage. Any failed quests are locked out for the remainder of the game, and characters can just die, meaning that these evil actions have dire consequences for the heroes. Choosing which ones to enact at which time is essential to the fate of the game, requiring intense discussion between the players. Of course, if a certain traitorous player happens to convince the others to choose a particular evil action, then things go really bad really quickly. Alternatively, the traitor can just reveal their true nature at any time, flipping their character sheet over to unleash their final form. The traitor's actions will now consist of doing just outright bad stuff to mess up the heroic player's plans. What a jerk. But if heroic players can get their hands on some powerful relics and put their heads together, then they could survive to make some clever sacrifices and ensure the future of Camelot. Shadows over Camelot is one of those masochistic experiences that players can share together. Every turn makes things appear grimmer and grimmer, with knights falling left and right, and a sea of towering siege engines knocking on the castle doors. But it's not impossible to win. If players can sniff out the traitor and use each turn efficiently, then they'll have a damn good chance at success. Or there could just be a complete mess that descends into failure faster than you can say, "Where's Lancelot?" Either way, Shadows over Camelot is an entertaining tabletop experience that I want to see make a glorious return very soon.
The Republic of Rome, an absolutely massive semi-cooperative game that puts players in charge of a faction of senators, all of them working sort of together to make sure that Rome doesn't fall due to wars on the edges of the empire, or famine, or revolt from the people, but also making sure that by the end of the game they are powerful enough to elect one of their own as consul for life and effectively end the Republic and make it into an autocracy. The reason I love this game so much is that it could be, it should be, really quite dry. It's this enormous board with all of these different metrics talking about, this is how happy the people are, here are some upcoming wars, here are the current wars we need to prosecute, here's the table you roll at the very start of the Senate phase when the current consul makes a speech to open the Senate and the people will react accordingly. All of these things, you could interact with them solely on a mechanical basis. Just be like, all right, well, we need to prosecute the Third Punic War now. Never mind the fact that the First or the Second Punic War haven't come out of the deck yet. This is definitely the Third Punic War, and we need to elect a general, give them some forces, and send them off, and hope that they don't decide to turn rebel, turn around and march on Rome, because I think we can all agree that would be bad. You could have that conversation just being like, well, I think, Lowly's, who's that senator there? We've not sent them off on anything, so they don't have a corruption marker. I think it's probably a safe bet. And anyway, we're not even sending so many troops that you're not going to betray Rome, are you? We're not sending her off with so many troops that she's going to do that. No. Dull. Instead, at least in the way I've played it, which is why I absolutely love it, everybody plays it right down the line, just being like, my fellow senators, it is my belief that, etc., etc. Preferably everyone should be wearing a bedsheet toga. And basically just by role-playing the thing, it is one of the most chaotic and wonderful board game experiences I think I've ever had. As I kind of intimated with the whole Third Punic War coming up before the Second and First Punic Wars, this isn't necessarily a perfect game. There are certain bits of it that are definitely not well-rounded. The rulebook is a nightmare, and some bits of it ask you to look up other bullet points, literally like look up bullet point 24B brackets II, but 24B brackets II doesn't exist. There are some bits of the rulebook that just aren't there. So there's a healthy amount of fudging that needs to happen. But given the fact this game mandates that somebody makes a speech at the top of every round, and you can try and assassinate people, and if that doesn't go well, you can be put on trial. So in the past, we've created a dock out of a clothes horse. This is one of those games that is just... It's very, very earnest and is perfectly enjoyable in that way. I've played this game, in fairly low key in terms of drama stakes, and we've had a perfectly serviceable time. It's pretty good. But it's when everybody leans into the fact that they have a cast of characters and they have a faction of senators with its own logo and its own personality, that it becomes something just screamingly hilarious. So yeah, that's why I think it should come back into print, so that I can try and influence more people to strip their beds, stick on a toga, and spend an entire day roaring at one another. Oh, and there's a death cup at the start of every year. You draw chits, and some senators just die of natural causes. We put ours in a cup, and it's called the Death Cup.